Hey guys, greetings from quarantine. As I promised, I am going to be posting this tutorial on how to make this kick-ass Mortal Kombat style mask that covers your nose and your mouth as recommended by health officials if you're going out in public. This pattern I found on a website called Craft Passion. You can print the patterns right there on that site, so she does own this. I do want to give them credit for that. I will also post some links to no-sew options and maybe some that are just needle and thread that you can do if you don't have a sewing machine. I am not a sewing expert. I taught myself, but if I can help you out, great. The design of the mask, as you can see here, there is a wire pocket where you can put a flexible wire like a pipe cleaner. And there is also a pocket here in order to put a mixed or a non-woven media in this case, and I'll go over that. It is a detailer's paper towel. Again, I'm not an expert. We're just gonna go with it, okay? I really miss you guys a lot in quarantine. I made cookies, chocolate chip. I wish I could share them with you. All right, let's get sewing. Okay, now we're gonna go over the things that you will need to complete your mask. Of course, you'll need your sewing machine since this is a sewing machine tutorial. But the first thing you're going to want to do is go on to Craft Passion and print out these patterns. Once you print them out, you'll want a ruler, and you do want to check the scale there that it is indeed 2 inches, and then you know that the pattern actually is to scale. Cut those out on the outer line, not the inner line, the outer one. This inner line is just shows you where your seam allowance is. So you will cut those out. Now they have them for women, also for men, and patterns for kids. So you cut those out. Now these are kind of flimsy because they're just paper. So I trace them onto basically just a file folder. Any major cardstock will do. And you have your templates. This template is for a men's mask. So I've cut those out. They're a little more sturdy so that I can trace them onto my fabric. Next, of course, you will need your fabric, stick pins, scissors, obviously thread. You'll need that ruler. You will use this again. A pen or any kind of fabric marker that you have. A pipe cleaner, or you can also use florist wire or any kind of bendable wire. This is actually what we're going to be putting into the nose pocket. You also need a small safety pin, some elastic, or if you can't find this, because apparently it's gold right now, you can use t-shirt yarn, which is stretchy and comfortable, and it's free because you probably have crappy old t-shirts laying around that you don't use anymore. I will go over how to make this. You also will need some non-woven medium. This is what would go inside of your mask as kind of a filter. I've heard people using things like coffee filters or the white accordion lining inside of a furnace filter. This is actually detailer's towels that you'd find in the automotive section. You also will want to have an iron ready to go. This is going to be your best friend for a lot of reasons. So first we're going to start with the fabric. Once you pick out your fabric, which you can buy at Walmart, you need about a yard. 1 yard will make about 6 to 8 masks. So once you get your material, you do need to wash it in hot water, dry it, and maybe wash it and dry it again. That gets rid of any of the shrink. As I mentioned, I take those cardstock patterns and I'm going to lay that down. I've already traced on this, but I'm going to show you again just for illustration purposes. And then you're going to flip it and do the mirror side. Now you're going to repeat that process on your lining piece. Now this piece is white. You can actually just use the same fabric that you're making your mask out of. You don't have to purchase another kind. I just prefer to have white. Now you do want to take note that you're not going to be using the same template before. This was the main piece. I have a marked main pocket for men. In this case, I'm going to be using the lining template, pocket lining for men. Now it's time to cut those bad boys out. Okay, all done cutting. I cheated, I actually already had these cut. So now I have my lining pieces, my main mask pieces, but there is one more piece remaining. The mask is actually 5 pieces. The next thing you need to do is create a bias tape. So a bias tape is used to go around maybe curved edges, or you need it to move a little bit. Here I'm back to this camo material. You notice I can't really stretch it this way, but if I do it on the diagonal, it stretches. So we need to create a 6-inch by 2-inch piece of bias tape. And how you do that is pretty simple. I'm gonna take the material and I am going to fold it into a triangle. And this is where your handy iron comes in, because then you can just press that and then you'll have a nice straight line. Okay, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a line right there. I'm going to use that as my guide and take my ruler, which I think I've had since grade school. It is true, I never throw anything away. Make a little mark there at 2 inches. So we need a 6-inch by 2-inch piece of tape. So I'm going to make a line across, using that as my guide. Again, 2 inches, just making sure. All right, so now we're gonna cut that out. Now, I have my stretchy bias tape. I only need 6 inches, so I am going to cut off my useless corners. We don't need those. Throw those in the scrap pile. And again, I need 6 inches. So, voila, the final piece. Now I'm going to show you how to make t-shirt yarn, or T-yarn. It's literally just a strip of t-shirt. That's it. All you need is an old t-shirt. Preferably, you want one that does not have side seams, which is actually called a tube t-shirt. Believe it or not, sometimes these are the cheapest t-shirts, so probably the ones you're more likely to give away. Now, this t-shirt saves lives. St. Jude t-shirt, sorry, but it has a better purpose now, so that's what we're gonna do. Generally, you do want to avoid shirts that have printing on them, but this is silk screen. I've cut these up before and I've never had a problem. So, you know, if you can get more yarn out of it by cutting it, then fine. So, otherwise I'd only be able to use this part of it, which seems wasteful. So you're gonna lay out your t-shirt nice and flat. Again, you kind of want to line up everything and get all the wrinkles out. It just makes it a little bit easier. I'm going to cut off the end seam here. Now, I am going to cut just below the armpits. So just right there. Here's a little half shirt for you. This. Next thing you're going to do is you have your square of tube of the t-shirt. You're going to fold that up until you have about an inch at the top. Now you want to take your handy dandy ruler from 3rd grade again, and I am going to just mark, it just makes it a little bit easier, about a 1/2 inch along the shirt, just making little marks. But again, this is a great alternative to elastic. In fact, I think it's better. One, because you can find it in your t-shirt drawer, and 2, it's more comfortable. I am going to now cut strips, and I'm going to cut through the fold here, but not through this top part. So, we've got all that, and we got all this fun fringe. Woo! I will say cutting all of this stuff does get a little tedious, so if you're making a lot of masks, I would highly recommend using your quarantinators as slave labor, like I have. Okay, y'all, we're ready. So now I'm laying that part flat. What you want to do is make diagonal cuts. So this one here, I'm going to cut off the shirt, just like so. This cut here, I'm going to diagonal to the first string. This cut here, I'm going to diagonal to this string, number 2. This one here, which is number 4 on this side, is going to diagonal to number 3. So we end up with a long continuous string of t-shirt. And now we have our shredded t-shirt. Now we need to turn it into yarn. How we do that? Find an edge, and you're going to pull it. You're going to pull it, and you're going to pull it, and pull it again, and keep pulling. Just keep pulling. And if you notice, it turns into like a little tube of elastic. It's magic. By the way, like how I dressed up for you today? Yeah? Okay. All right, let's get back to pulling. Look at that. I turned a t-shirt into a ball of yarn. Just like that. Isn't that gorgeous? Okay, the first part we're going to sew on the panel piece is the front, which is the large curve. All right, I took the footer off so that I could show you that we're going to be using the seam allowance of 3/8 of an inch right there. And let's get started. Now we have our seam along the front of the mask, and this is your inside panel. Next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to clip along your seam allowance, not into your stitch, just along the edges, which I am going to show you now. Now you're going to turn your mask. This is again your inside panel. Turn that right side out. This part is the part that's going to be facing your mouth, and this part will be on the inside of the mask. The important part is to get all of that seam, kind of smooth it out with your finger, and make sure it's all going in the same direction. This is where I like to use my iron. So once I've got this kind of smoothed out, I'm going to go in and iron this back, because then we're going to put a top stitch along the front. I forgot to hit record whenever I did the top stitch. So I just did a nice top stitch along the front of the seam, and now I'm going to do a top stitch on the sides as well. So now we're going to do the front panel piece. This time you're going to put the print towards the inside of your mask and line those two edges up. Just like so. Again, if you need to pin it, you can. We're going to sew that large curve right here with 3/8 inch seam allowance along the edge. And there we have our seam on the side. And just like we did with the internal panel, we're going to clip that so that it easily turns inside out. Again, just maybe every 1/4 inch-ish all along the edge. Just make sure you do not cut into your actual stitch. So now that we've got that stitch done, we're going to turn it right side out, and we're going to smooth the seam down with our finger. Now it's important, this rough edge needs to be going the same direction as your inside panel piece. Now bring that guy back. my inside panel piece, all of them are facing to my right. So I want the outside mask panel to be facing the same direction. I'm gonna go use my iron and press all that down so that I can add my top stitch on the front. But while I'm at the iron, I'm gonna show you something else. Remember that bias tape, the stretchy piece? While you're at the ironing, go ahead and take your bias piece, fold in the two edges 1/4 inch, and then fold in half and iron that, because you're gonna be sewing it. So if it's ironed while you're there, make it a lot easier. So I have my flattened out ironed nose panel from that bias piece, and I also have my front panel of the mask all ironed out. So I'm gonna go ahead and add a top stitch to the front part of the mask right over that seam. So now I have my top stitch. I'm gonna move on to this little bias panel. All you're gonna do is just sew a top stitch, single stitch on each side. That's all we're gonna do with this for right now. And then we'll be putting the mask together. So we have our nose pocket panel. Now we're gonna attach that to the lining piece. All right, so back to our lining piece. You may notice that whenever you join your two panels together, you might get this little pointy thing. You can clip that. No harm. Now, again, the clean side, not the ugly side, but the clean side is the part that's gonna be facing your mouth. The nose panel needs to go along the top of this, the curved part. So we need to fold this in half, kind of mark the center with your finger. By the way, don't judge my fingernails, okay? Mama needs a manicure and this is just the way it is. So I'm gonna line that up and go ahead and pin on your nose panel. Now this is the reason that the bias tape was important, because if you notice, it's easily, I can easily bend it to the shape of the mask. The next step, now that we've got that pinned, we're gonna sew along the bottom of the wire nose panel. Not the top, the bottom. Don't do the sides, because that's where the wire is gonna go in, just along the bottom. So I have sewn that on the bottom. My pins got caught, so it's not the prettiest stitch, but it's fine. You're gonna keep those pins in there because what we're gonna do is now join the two panels together, the front panel and the inside panel. Okay, joining the two panels together, you're gonna take the right side of the fabric and you're gonna match it with the right side of this fabric, so then you have the wrong side on the outside. It's really important to match the seams up, and if you remember, I wanted you to make sure that the seam was all going in the same direction on both panel, the outer panel and the inner panel, and that's because when you match the two up, you can see you actually equal out the thickness because they're on opposite sides. So you're gonna match the seams and then take those pins and place them along the mask. All right, kids, that side's done. Now we're just gonna pin the bottom because we're gonna sew both sides together. So now we're gonna sew these together. You're not gonna go right on the edge, you're actually gonna do a 3/8 seam allowance again along the edge. So that's about, it's about right there that your stitch will go from the edge. Because again, we're gonna be snipping all of this. So you want a 3/8 and also a 3/8 on the bottom as well. so we've sewed the two sides together, and now it's time for the magic to happen. So hold on to your kittens, Carol. Things are gonna get wild. I'm gonna turn that inside out, and voila, you have a mask. Well, sort of, we're almost there. Next thing you wanna do is you wanna just kind of rub those seams flat on the inside. I am gonna iron this to flatten it out some more so that I can put a top stitch in it, but you do wanna kind of manipulate it a little bit beforehand. So I'm gonna go over and iron this. While I'm ironing, I'm also gonna iron down these folds because I'm just gonna run a stitch just along that part. And I'm also gonna run a top stitch all along here. But you wanna stitch these sides down because if you don't, we're gonna end up making this into our tube to put our elastic or our T-string in. And if you don't sew these down, you will actually inadvertently create a pocket so that when you're trying to feed that string through there, it gets stuck, and then you're like me spending 45 minutes with tweezers and small scissors trying to free it. So I learned that after mask number 1, sew that down. Okay, I have ironed that mask. I ironed it real good, and I ironed those edges that I talked about. So now we're gonna put a top stitch. Well, I'm gonna do it on this side actually. We're gonna stitch these closed, stop, start again, and stitch along the edge, this top stitch. Don't skip this part and be a lazy ass like I did the first time, because when you wash your mask, it will lose its shape a little bit, and then you're constantly like trying to iron it. So just put the top stitch in, take the time and do it. Don't be lazy, Karen. Okay guys, we're almost done. Almost to the home stretch. Now we need to remove any extra string you have. Get rid of those. Now we're gonna go back over to the iron, and you're gonna fold this in about 1/4 inch, just like so, and then fold it in right up against your white panel there and get that pressed. That makes it a little easier so you don't have to pin it all the time. But you're gonna sew that, we're gonna sew this tunnel. We're not gonna sew it into this, we're just gonna sew it right there. So I'm gonna go get those pressed, and then we will do our final bit of sewing before we put the whole thing together. Okay, I've pressed my sides, and again, I'm gonna run a stitch right along the edge of the material, not sewing into the pocket. This is our pocket for our non-woven media. So we are just creating a tunnel in order to put our string or elastic or yarn. If you are using elastic and deciding to do ear loops, you would go ahead and put your elastic loop in there, and this would be where that would be held. I'm not doing that mostly because it's hard to find elastic, and I'm really a bigger fan of using the t-shirt tape. Okay, so we have our finished mask with our nose wire pocket, the pocket for your non-woven media, and now we just need to string it with the T yarn that I showed you how to make. Here we go. Let me find where I put the end of that. Oh, there it is. Okay. What you're going to do is you're going to go up one side, make a loop, go back down the other side. Somebody's here. I bet it's a package. It can wait. So again, up this side, make a loop, back down this side. These sides will be free and you can use them as a tie. The method of stringing your mask is to take your tiny safety pin. I don't know which side this is. There we go. I'm gonna just hook that in your string, and you're gonna feed that up your mask. Now we're gonna go down the other side. I got some extra strings here. I think I'm gonna get those. Tiny scissors. All right. Just feed that right back down. You can also use shoelaces, I've seen. I don't know. I guess they're probably cleaner than torn up t-shirt, but I kind of like the T-yarn. The standard length for your t-shirt yarn is around 44 inches. Be honest, I've never measured. So I just give plenty. I mean, you got a whole ball of this stuff. Do you really need to be stingy with it? And you can make it anytime you need to. So I'm gonna make it a little bit longer on each side. This is actually a mask for Brian. This was actually the men's pattern. I probably should have mentioned that earlier. Whatever. He's got a big head, so I'm gonna give him more room. Now we're gonna add that nose wire, which is really simple. You know, it's approximately at this point 5.5 inches. So I'm gonna double that actually, just to make it a little more strong. I'm just snip off the edge. Round that around. And now we're gonna feed it into that little hole. And work it, work it, work it until it's right in the center. Boop. Now you have a moldability of the pipe cleaner. I will tell you, washing these, you want to remove the pipe cleaner and the string. I know that's kind of cumbersome, but this t-shirt string will get wound around your stuff, anything else you've got in the washer or dryer, so it's just easier to remove these. That's why if you make enough of these, you can, have one for every day of the week or whatever. Now, the last thing, which you can choose to do, is to add in your non-woven media. Obviously, this is a little bit bigger. I'm just going to kind of fold it. I don't think it has to be perfect, to be honest. Maybe if, you're type A or whatever, you can worry about that, but I'm not, so I'm not going to worry about that. Gonna pull that in there. These pockets can also hold surgical masks. So, I mean, if you have a surgical mask, you probably don't need the cloth mask, but maybe, I don't know, you want to show your personality or something, so you make a cover for it, whatever floats your boat. I'm just gonna tuck that in. Again, you'll want to obviously remove this before washing and, change it all the time, but then it's nice and hidden in there, and you got your mask.